All right. So this is Cassia and Brian from the future.
Yeah.
We are just recording a little addendum to today's episode before we dive into the depths of Manon, the watery depths, I should say. Because like when we were recording our last episode, we're kind of like, oh, we kind of forgot to mention what we would call a second film in like a proposed KOTOR trilogy. So maybe this will be a little preview to a future episode or past. I forget which episodes come out in what order, but we're having fun and it'll make sense in the context of what's being released.
That's right.
So question for you, Brian, is what what would you call a second film in a KOTOR trilogy?
Yeah, so it's tricky, right? Because you want to have a name that's kind of bold and fits in with the theme of the story. I think I like calling the Knights of the Old Republic the films in our trilogy. I like calling them acts as opposed to like episode. So we had like the Skywalker saga was all episodes. So I think something like acts is good. I like how they do the chapters in The Mandalorian. So just something that's a little bit different, kind of differentiates. Acts feels like an older kind of, vernacular for how to describe something. So I want something that, kind of captures, what's really going on in the second film. And, kind of things are starting to go bad and we're starting to realize a little bit more about our characters in this film. So I think something that's kind of dark and kind of ominous sounding is good. So something like Knights of the Old Republic, Act 2, the Revelations. I think something like that sounds really good. What about you, Cassia? Do you have anything really good in mind?
I think it's really good, but maybe someone's gonna be like, no, that's a stupid idea and like you need to stop. But I was kind of thinking, kind of like combining like the Star Forge with like the Bond and kind of like Destiny and all that. I would say Knights of the Old Republic Act 2 Across the Stars.
Okay.
Because I'm like, Colin Trevorrow was gonna call episode 9 Duel of the Fates, so I'm like, I can have this,
Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah.
I feel like some studio executive would be like, no, it's going to be called Battle of the Unredeemed. And it's like, no, but I want this nice poetic title, and it's like, no, it's not going to happen. But that's what I would want. And perhaps looking forward to the future, I would call Act 3 the Star Forge. Maybe I'll change my mind. But then I was like, what should I call Act 1, even though I feel like I called it The Mysterious Stranger? No executive would ever let anyone call a Star Wars film The Mysterious Stranger, but I'm like, George Lucas would have. But I'm like, maybe that ruins my Star theme, so maybe I need to call it A Star is Born or something.
Yeah,
So,
I like kind of playing off of like the same like type of wording. So you have like Awakening and Revelation and stuff like that, like keeping it kind of simple and poignant. But yeah, I like Across the Stars. That's a good little nod, and it certainly fits in with the theme of kind of this original Star Wars duo we have here with Bastila and Revan. So yeah, I'm in for that.
Yeah. So we'll see. Well, I mean, I was gonna say we'll see what it ends up being called, but I'm like, oh yeah, it's not happening because it's just in our heads and this podcast.
That's right.
But one thing I forgot to mention while we were recording, like our overview of Act 2 of Knights of the Old Republic is, I feel like if someone were to make a Knights of the Old Republic movie, they'd be like, you know what this needs? I'm like, nice character-driven scenes that progress the story and promotes character depth. And they'd be like, no, this needs a hallway scene. And I'd be like, oh, okay. And I was kind of thinking about it, like, how do you make a hallway scene interesting? Because I feel like we've had that with Darth Vader. We had that in Rogue One, where Vader just killed everyone. I think that's the best use of it because it heightens the tension of the scene. And then you have that in the Clone Wars, Siege of Mandalore with Maul, and you kind of just see him kind of lose it, I think, and it was kind of creepy. My goodness. And then you have it with Luke, and like that one kind of took me out of it because I was like thinking about what that meant, you know, for the greater Star Wars, you know. But I was kind of like, how do I make that different? Like, how do I make this, like, if I did have to do a hallway scene, how do you make it interesting, kind of different, but kind of promotes the story? And I was like, what if on Manon, where like Revan and Bastila, they're like the I think they would be the closest they were, kind of like before the relationship drama and the Leviathan and the reveal and kind of like the fallout of that, like in Act 2. So I was like, what if it's kind of like a little bit like you get to see two people like in sync, like they're bonded, kind of like Rey and Kylo in The Last Jedi, and like they have a hallway scene and it's like two people, not with like the same fighting moves, but complementary fighting moves, and like they're fighting together and it's two people having a hallway scene. Like, I think that would be cool.
Yeah, I like the idea of having them kind of doing it together, because one of the things I think would be important, so we've seen the hallway scenes, and I think that you'd mentioned it, and I felt, you know, kind of the same way when we saw Luke do it. The hallway scene's kind of like a dark side driven thing, right? Like, it's really aggressive. It doesn't seem like something that a Jedi would necessarily be doing after we'd seen Vader do it and Darth Maul do it. But, you know, I think that you could definitely play around with it and have some sort of a different take on it to where it's not necessarily looking the same and feeling the same, right? It's not just a box to check off, you know, Star Wars movie, hallway scene, check. So having them do it together would feel different. And if you look at the second, you know, sort of act of our story here, we're on Tatooine, we're on Manon, and we're on the Leviathan. So you have kind of your best opportunity for a quote-unquote hallway scene on probably Manon or the Leviathan. So I like the idea of having it on Manon, because that way it can be, you know, just kind of focused on those two. But I think you could also maybe have it play interesting to have it on the Leviathan. So you could possibly have like Malik sort of, you know, setting up a kind of a trap, or, you know, isolating them, and they kind of have to work their way through this hallway to get through each other, because he knows that's going to, you know, kind of exhaust them mentally, and maybe sort of start to tap into Bastila's kind of wavering commitment to the light side that he can sense at that point. So something like that might be good to use it as part of her turn, instead of, you know, just being like, oh, look how awesome these Jedi are, you know, taking everyone out.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, maybe she's a little too keen to commit war crimes, you know? Like, maybe that's concerning. Like, maybe she needs therapy, you know? And so kind of make it a character story thing rather than just be like, wow, pew pew, you know? But yeah, so those were just some like housekeeping things, and we can take a quick break, and then we will discuss the legacy of the Sith. And you can find us on Instagram at Ebon Podcast.
And if you want to connect with me, I can be found on Instagram at astro_droid_. On Patreon, the link is in our Instagram bio, or you can find it at www.patreon.com/EbonHawk The Ebon Hawk can be found on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, as well as everywhere else that Anchor podcasts are distributed. Subscriptions, reviews, and shares help us out.
Our intro and outro themes were composed by Alistair Shorman, at alistairsounds.wixsite.com/alistairsounds. Our transition music was composed by Christian Walker at christianwalkermusic.com. This episode of the Ebon Hawk podcast has been brought to you by Nikki Dog from Patreon. May the Force be with you. We will be back soon. Bye for now.